Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, really excited to be a part of this revisit to some of the songs that I did with co-hosts. And this particular song, Circus, off of the album Sweet Freedom. My co-host was Terry T-Bone Mathley from T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side. Great interview podcast. And we hope that comes back really soon. It is on hiatus, looking anxiously for its return. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it on the last episode, but Nathan from the Deep Purple podcast was my co-host for the Magician's Birthday episode. That ran into, I think it was 3 parts. It was a great deep dive. I mean, it's a long song and you got 2 people talking, great conversation. That was a really good episode. But here today, we're here to talk about Circus. This is a really different song, but you know, Heep was so diverse in their songwriting and performances. It's like anytime you got a new album, any song could go anywhere and you would never know. And that was part of the excitement. With bands that are just kind of, you know, straightforward rock and roll, it gets a bit old after a while, doesn't it? There's not anything new and exciting. It's just, okay, they did that song. I like that song. They did that song. That wasn't as good. Okay, they did that song. That was a little bit better. But it's really all kind of the same thing. What I really liked is bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, King Crimson, Uriah Heep, Deep Purple, bands that you just never really knew what you were going to get from song to song. And this was also a thing of the times too. I mean, definitely back in the 70s, things were a lot more experimental, I want to say. And, rock and roll was still pretty new, at least in this version that was developing. And so, the next song would come on, you're like, what is this going to be? I have no idea. It could be hard and aggressive. It could be completely melodic. It could be somebody sitting there with a zither for all I know. So it was really exciting to get a new album. And even like in the 80s, when I started getting the back catalog of albums of bands that I was liking from their 70s days, every album was just so exciting. And nowadays, I just don't feel it's like that. I mean, songs are individual songs, but a lot of them have a more consistent sound. There's a lot less experimentation. It's almost like this is what people want. And so here's the format, or here's our sound. So it's a lot different nowadays, I feel, than it was back then. There's still some bands from the 70s, though, that are doing that, which I like very much. So here we are with Circus. Let's dig in. So let's put a little perspective on this in terms of the album, because, right, all these song reviews are done about the song, but let's just take a second and look at where this is on the album. So on Sweet Freedom, this comes after 7 Stars, which is a much more up-tempo, aggressive rock song, has a great beat to it, got some good effects. It ends with that, half alphabet and then the half reverse alphabet, and it's a really strong song. And then Complete Departure, we're going into this. Now, for me, I just kind of envision sitting out in a warm meadow. The grass is getting a little bit tall. There's lots of, maybe weeds and stuff that are growing a little bit high. The sun's coming down on you. There's a gentle breeze blowing. It just gives me that feel like springtime, really nice. But it's a beautiful acoustic song. No drums. We've got the shaker here. And we've got 2 guitars. We don't have any keyboards, which is fine because we've got these lovely guitar harmonics. And it just really flows beautifully. I love the feel of the song. Got some good dynamics in it, right? Not just strumming, waiting for the vocals to start. There's actually interesting things to listen to. It's a really well-constructed and intriguing beginning.
Walking around this concrete garden, viewing all in vain, thinking why a dream is driving everyone
What I like is that we have the inclusion of a completely different instrument. Vocals always change the dynamics of a song, but I don't feel like anything really changed. The vocals are nice and gentle, and they just blended in very smoothly, didn't take away from the music or the pacing of it at all. Just kind of came in as a nice addition. And we've got the inclusion of a little bit of percussion that I forgot to mention earlier. Probably congas or bongos, I would imagine. They're very gentle, very subtle in the background. You almost feel them more than you hear them, which is nice because, percussion can easily distract from what's going on. If the attack is too much, if they're too forward in the mix, it can really overpower things, even some simple, gentle percussion like this. So I really like that they're far in the background and not very pronounced.
I've been here for too long to remember sights and sounds from this town of clowns. Making up, dressing up and walking around, thinking that you're Greta Garbos. I'm sorry, my dears, but we only sat down and laughed in sorrow.
You really don't notice it that much because everything is done so subtly in this song. And that's part of the beauty of the mix of this song. You have the addition of an organ. We have a tambourine that's been added to the shaker. We've got, a build here. We've got a little bit more in the way of percussion coming in. And it's just a really nice, gentle thing that almost, you almost kind of go, oh, wait a minute, when did this organ start? Because it just kind of blended in really nicely and subtly. It didn't just come in out of nowhere and boom, there's an organ. It did, but not in the way that you would notice it, which is really, really brilliant mixing.
But it was you that opened the door, and it's that we thank you for.
And after that nice key change and break, we come back in with the opening riff again. Very smooth, flowed very well. It sometimes can be challenging to find a reasonable way musically to go back to an opening riff, because a lot of times the opening riff is something that's kind of set apart from the song. But in this case, it just went right back into it very smoothly, and I really like that.
Walking around this concrete garden, viewing all in vain, thinking why a dream is driving everyone insane.
So in addition to slightly busier percussion, we've actually had a couple of more additions. We have the rim shot, which is just the stick hitting the rim of the snare very gently. And we also have hi-hats that have come in and kind of give that shh sound that we're hearing. And again, it's like, where exactly did this start? We didn't notice it because it just came in very gently with the flow of the song. Beautiful.
Everyone insane. Everyone insane. Everyone's insane.
Okay, so I forgot to mention who's in the band at this point. It's basically the same lineup as our last couple of shows. On vocals, we've got David Byron. Guitar, we have Mick Box. Bass, we have Gary Thain. Drums, Lee Kerslake. Keys and guitar, we've got Ken Hensley. So what I was hearing was an acoustic guitar on my left, an acoustic guitar on my right, and then the harmonics were in my left, or leaning towards the left, I should say. And so there had to be at least 3 guitar tracks in there. Maybe there was another one, but I don't think so. I'm also not really picking up any bass, so I'm not sure if Gary played on this song. At least in these headphones, I'm really not hearing anything. I would have expected kind of something playful, at least. The song certainly lent the room for it. But, it being so gentle with the acoustic guitars and the very gentle keyboard and percussion, a bass might have been a bit much. But it's interesting that I didn't really pick up on any. So if there is any, I apologize. I'm certainly not hearing it in this mix, on these headphones, in this studio, on this day, in this moment. That's just the way it is. But a really lovely song. It's a lot of fun. It's nice and gentle. Definitely has a place among Heep's arsenal, because they had the ability to go from a more drive-in song to something like this, and then just go wherever they want to on an album, because they had that ability, and it just blends so well. The way that they craft their songs, they can do that. And not all bands can. So it's one thing I've always appreciated about Uriah Heep, and probably one of the things that attracted me to them in the first place, with my first album being Demons and Wizards, was just there was a consistency to the sound, but there was a certain variety in how different the songs were. I feel like a lot of bands just never really pulled that off, which is a shame. I mean, but stick to what you're good at. Some bands just have one thing they can do, and they're very good at that, which is fine. I like a little more variety. I like a bit of surprise when I get a new album, and Heep certainly delivers on that. So another great song in the Heep catalog, that was Circus, you guys. A shorter episode, to be sure, but not any less important. It's just because the song is shorter. I mean, it's under 3 minutes. What do you want? But great song. I hope that you enjoyed my re-review of this. I will be back on the next show for the next re-review song. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!